Final Fantasy VI is a masterpiece. There is no other way to put it. A story about science and magic bringing about incomparable amounts of advancement, but also massive amounts of bloodshed as a consequence. We follow the story of two young women, both residents of the militaristic empire, trying to find their way in the world, all while serial killer clowns with unmatched ambitions plot to rise up to the pinnacle of humanity. And he succeeds too. I didn't have the Virtual Console version of Final Fantasy VI growing up. I didn't have it on Game Boy Advance either. A lot of my experiences with these pre-90s RPGs actually began with the cursed iPhone ports. Final Fantasy VI, Lunar Silver Star Story, Chrono Trigger before it was fixed, hell, even Phantasy Star 4. I had quite a few of these games be my introduction point of on the iPhone, and you know what? I still love them. Final Fantasy VI is my second favorite Final Fantasy, only beaten out by 10, and honestly, ask me a year from now, I might just prefer 6 over it. It's one of the best games I've ever played, with a phenomenal story, great cast of characters, amazing soundtrack, fun gameplay mechanics, and an extremely deep, gameplay system with the Espers. But before you get to really access any of that or see what this amazing game has to offer, well, there's one bad octopus standing in your way. After taking down Vargas and meeting up with Sabin, you make it to the Returner's base. Terra has yet to regain her memory and is starting to feel emotions she's never felt before, as she was raised in the Empire, but unfortunately it wasn't as a citizen, it was more as a puppet and a living weapon. We've gotten introduced to some of our initial cast, and they're starting to flesh them out and develop as characters a bit, especially Terra. You've also gotten the ability to start upgrading your equipment and gotten handy relics to give you passive abilities such as the Knight's Code and Silver Spectacles to make things easier. And after a disguised but thou must from Banon, the base gets discovered and we head to GTFO by getting on a raft and riding the river out. Now, your team is locked to Terra, Edgar, Sabin, and Banon, as Locke had to leave to go break into South Figaro and find out what's going on with the Empire's occupation. And here's the level. Lathe River isn't just linear, it's basically an auto-scroller with you being dragged down a river while mandatory battles take place. Even if you choose to turn off random encounters in something like the Pixel Remaster, you're still going to have to fight some enemies here. There's just one small caveat here. This is also an escort mission because if Banon falls, it's an instant game over. Doesn't matter who else is alive, and this old man is pretty fragile, lacking a shield or any relics to speak of, and his health is less than amazing. If you took your time coming here, he might be a bit bulky, but in this playthrough he joined at level 5 with only 100 HP, and enemies here love two things: inflicting you with blind and AoE attacks, and Banon is going to be the prime target for many of these things. Your best bet is to have Sabin spam his blitzes while Edgar can spam Bioblaster or Auto Crossbow to take care of enemies and kill them quickly. Banon should use his unique skill Prey every single turn to heal the party for a decent bit, and Terra can use magic if she likes, or put her newly acquired gauntlets to use to Unga Bunga. That's more up to you depending on how you choose to build her. Overall, it's a bit annoying, but it's not too bad all things considered, until you get to the very end where you get jumped by the bad octopus. This bad octopus is named Ultros, and he's here to ruin your day and potentially give you multiple game over. But looking at the boss fights before Ultros, we have Ymir, the tutorial boss that's near impossible to lose because you have Magitech armor for this fight, and it's just the obligatory know when to attack and know when not to attack boss fight that you see in a lot of Final Fantasy games between 4 through 7. Afterwards, there's the Narsh Guard leader, who some people say is hard because he does a lot of damage, but not really. See, he only has 400 HP, so he doesn't last very long in battle, and even if he does somehow kill you or inflict slow or stop upon you, it's not game over, you just respawn and can try him again with no real consequence. The idea is that you have to protect Terra from the invading army, but he never moves, and every single tower defense segment in Final Fantasy VI can be stopped by just putting someone in front of the defense point and body blocking the enemies coming in, because they can only ever approach from the bottom and the defense point's always a 1x1 square. Then there's the Magitech armor, which just exists as a way for you to kill off Kefka's soldiers and leave him stranded in the desert. They hit hard but have barely any HP, and Terra can nuke them with fire magic, taking them out in under a minute. Then there's Vargas, who has a mighty 10,000 HP, which is insane, but once Sabin shows up, a single hit of Rapid Fire Fist will take him out. If you're lucky, you can steal the Mithril Claws off of him here. I was not lucky and he did not have that item on him. Then we get to Ultros, a recurring boss in the game, but for some reason his first fight is by far his hardest, and not just because of how strong he is in relation to his placement in the story, but he's also straight up has higher stats than his second fight against him. Actually, with 3000 HP, Ultros is tankier than any boss you fight up until Dada Luma, many hours deeper into the game, and that boss is weak to the imp status effects, so really he's stronger than anything you encounter until roughly the Esper research facility, and I don't understand why. Now, as far as offense goes, the boss has his regular attack, Ink Spray, which can blind a party member, an AoE tentacle attack that hits everyone for a fair bit of damage, and his attack where he targets a specific party member, and this attack can do upwards of 250 damage, which is a problem when you might not even be breaking 200 HP on anyone other than Sabin, and you only really know who he's going to target based off of what he says, but unless you can swap over to that party member's action quickly and defend, it doesn't really change the outcome of that party member most likely dying. And if he targets Banon, it might just be game over, as it will one-shot him, and we still have that rule that if Banon dies, it's an instant game over. This is where the game is teaching you about the front and back rows one way or another, as you have to put Banon in the back row or you will not survive his biggest attack without defending, and even then he's going to be vulnerable to death on the very next turn. And it's not like you can burst the boss down either. 3000 HP is a ton for this early in the game. Never mind Espers and Magic, we haven't even had the party split yet. Now, he does have a weakness to fire, which is nice, but it's likely only doing around 250 damage to him, and Ultros will always counter this attack. Usually it's with his Ink Spray attack, which will blind you, making hitting him even harder to do, but if you're playing anything other than the Pixel Remaster, his AI can decide to not follow the rules and just use any other attack as a counter as well. Thankfully, this isn't an issue in the Pixel Remaster, thank God. The fight is doable for new players, but it's gonna be an uphill battle that's mostly hard because of the Banon escort mission, because for some reason the ugly mug is too good for a Phoenix down. Heck, the escort mission itself feels almost pointless since he dies later in the game anyways. So, here's how we're gonna kick Hentai Gilgamesh's ass. First, make a backup save before going to the returner base, just to be on the safe side in case you find yourself needing better equipment and you need to buy something. You probably shouldn't, but just to be on the safe side. Second, make another backup save on the last island before Ultros. Here you have a save point in a bucket that infinitely heals your party up, so you can choose to just grind your heart's content if necessary, because it is an RPG. I don't recommend it, but it's an option. Now, your party is going to be locked to Edgar, Terra, Sabin, and Banon, so equip them as best you can. Personally, I recommend giving the defensive gear you have to Edgar, as he's able to use heavy armor and also heavy shields. I also recommend giving him the Knight's Code that you picked up in the returner base, as he can sometimes block attacks and take lethal blows for other party members and shrug them off and keep on going. Terra is going to depend on if you wanted to run a physical attacking build or go pure magic. If magic, keep her in the back row and give her the best shield you can. If physical, give her the gauntlet or the Genji gloves if you got those, and she can be a glass cannon that cuts through enemies and it doesn't trigger Ultros' counterattack like the fire does. This choice is purely up to preference. Sabin is an absolute beast. Now you may think to give him the gauntlet so he does more physical damage, but no, I actually recommend giving him a light shield, as that will give him just enough defense to face tank Ultros' strongest attack. And if you have the Mithril Claw, give that to him if you got lucky against Vargas, because that'll allow him to do a lot of extra damage. Though we won't be using Sabin's regular physical attack too terribly much. Banon can't equip anything, so just put him in the back and hope he doesn't die. Getting into the fight itself, Ultros will always open up with a tentacle attack targeting Terra, so have her defend on turn 1 or be ready to revive her because she probably won't be surviving. At this point, the boss is going to be a fairly simple loop where Terra should either use fire or attack depending on your build. Edgar should utilize the auto crossbow and bioblaster if you have that, in order to keep the damage going, because the best strategy for this boss is to make sure it dies as fast as possible to minimize the chance of Banon getting killed. Banon should pray every chance he gets unless you see Ultros say something like that ugly mug, in which case he should try and defend. Now, if you need a quick heal and Banon isn't available to use pray, then have Terra spend the time casting Cure on him, and that should get him back up to full. Don't worry about wasting the MP, this fight's not going to last too long anyways. Sabin should focus on blitzing, either Rapid Fire Fist or Aura Cannon, whichever you prefer. I personally think Aura Cannon is better if you can do the command, but don't bother with Meteor Strike as it won't damage Ultros because you can't body slam him back into water, for some unfortunate reason. If you struggle with performing blitzes, then I personally recommend letting Sabin stay at low HP and try to proc his limit break, which will tear into Ultros, but it's completely RNG focused, so we can only do so much with that. Now, if you're properly equipped, and on top of things, you should be able to come away with a win pretty easily, but if you're underleveled or god forbid lack the silver spectacles, then this fight is mostly going to be coming down to spamming fire and auto crossbow, hoping that Banon will live long enough. Actually, in that case, it might be better to give the Knight's Code to Sabin and have him just defend every turn. It'll be a long fight, but he can tank hits well enough with his large amount of HP for the early game. Now, the level of difficulty this fight provides the player will differ from person to person, and like many RPGs, it's not as hard when you know it's coming, but this fight walled me for a few days as a kid because Banon just kept on dying. Even without that, you may wonder, why would this boss be the worst difficulty spike and not something like Ultima Weapon, since he has 25,000 HP when the prior bosses couldn't even break 9,000. And for the record, yes, I do think Ultima Weapon is a considerably harder fight than Ultros 1. But the reason is that you're gonna be very strong by the time you get to Ultima Weapon in the Floating Continent. It's a climactic point in the story, plus the Ultima Weapon was alluded to as this unrivaled monster earlier in the game. To me, something like Ultima Weapon has its difficulty feel warranted because it's powerful, but so are you by this point in the game, and the floating island is built up as the climax of the pre-time skip story, and if you're really struggling with Ultima Weapon, you can always skip his second and third phases by draining his MP and he'll die that way, which actually was how I beat it on my first playthrough because this boss was otherwise impossible for me. Meanwhile, the first fight with Ultros comes right the hell out of nowhere in the middle of an escort mission, and for some reason not only is it a lot stronger than any boss prior, but it's also considerably stronger than bosses you're going to see for the next 3 or 4 story arcs, including the rematch with Ultros that is statistically weaker than this first battle, despite taking place multiple hours later in the game after you've gained a lot more power. After the fight's done, this is where we get a cutscene where Sabin decides he's going to try to suplex the octopus and it doesn't go very well, and this is also where we have our big party split, where the game truly opens up and you see just how big things are going to get. This isn't so much the case for Tara and Edgar's story, because it's only about 15 minutes long, but Locke has a pretty sizable challenge, and Sabin's is multiple hours, is one of the best points in the entire game in my opinion. And it's a shame that some of the game's best content is getting blocked off by this pretty frustrating boss that honestly looks like it's doing the troll face the whole time. To me, a difficulty spike is bad when the challenge feels completely unwarranted, such as opponents like a random wolf throwaway boss, a random demon chilling out in a broom closet, or a fucking plant being significantly tougher than any fight before it and most fights that come after it. Usually the worst difficulty spikes end up happening early in the games as well, and in many places they can lead to the player dropping the game entirely out of frustration for some reason or another, and it's a shame because many of these games that you have these terrible moments are still great experiences with that 1, maybe 2 bad points that can seriously hurt the experience as a whole for the player and permanently taint their playthrough. And somehow this isn't the only underwater life form in a classic JRPG series that's an absurd difficulty spike. Why yes, that was foreshadowing.